A year or so back, I was in an acting class. I was on stage with my scene partner, and we were acting out an improv scene. We were playing those guards that keep watch over those statues at the White House. The problem with the scene was that we were both vying to get the most control, to dictate where the scene was going. And it just ended up in this ultimate back and forth exchange that was really awkward and painful, and it ultimately got the scene nowhere. And I remember our teacher at one point just called out, "Someone be the loser." And so I did. And with that, I had the power. The scene was in my control. For the past 3 years of high school, I've struggled with depression and a clinical anxiety disorder. Added to the already rapidly fluctuating and confusing unpredictability that is teenage growth, I can tell you that the past 3 years have been nothing short of difficult, draining, and oftentimes hopeless. But in the next few minutes I want to show you how it is that I came to the realization that I wouldn't change these past 3 years for anything. Because learning to take power as the loser is the best life lesson that I believe anyone can learn. So tuck your pride and preconceptions away as I follow you through how it is that I came to that conclusion. About the first thing I learned in all of this, a thing that I hated to learn as the very stubborn person that I am, is that none of this, nothing I show you, will work in general if you are defensive. Our first reaction when called out, either by ourselves or by others or simply by the situation, is to be defensive. But that defensiveness acts as a wall. It prevents growth and constructiveness for both parties, but namely for you. Defensiveness boils down to a lack of humility and honesty. For any personal growth or even just acceptance to occur, it is imperative that you are honest and reasonable with yourself. We can be defensive towards our own thoughts and preconceptions about ourselves, not just words from others. And it'll often take forms that you're not even fully aware of. It'll take the form of just not wanting to accept. Accept that if you get out of bed, you'll have a lot of work to do. Accept that you're not sure where to start. Accept that maybe you haven't been doing your best all along. And we frame those all as bad things, as things we don't want to think about. So we don't. Our defensiveness serves as denial. Getting to a point where you can admit to yourself that you're stuck, or that you didn't do your best, or that you need help, is one of the most relieving feelings you can have. Because as people, especially teens nowadays, we set such unreasonable expectations for ourselves, and we put so much weight on perfection, we forget how much the progress part really matters. We forget that we're human, and that we're not even fully shaped humans, but humans still experiencing, and still learning, and still failing. And we forget that that's okay. An area in need of growth, a personal weakness, is not a defect. It is not pathetic. It's the starting line. And wherever you go from there can only be forward. But you have to be willing to step up and start. And to do that, you have to be honest with yourself. Now, I know that you've learned that in order to walk, you've got to put one foot in front of the other, and it's an overall forward projecting process. However, I've discovered that the most successful and effective movement forward in the long run often starts with taking a step back. Step -1 of achieving personal growth, or really any goal that you set for yourself, I believe, is stepping back. It's important to ask yourself where it was that you were before. What about your situation hasn't been working that you want to change? And moreover, why? What constructive impact will provide your overall quality of life? That intrinsic motivation is imperative to hold on to, as it's going to be what drives you throughout the rest of the entire process. Step 0, the baseline, the now. Pause and recognize where you are now. At this point, you've managed to shape your mindset enough to recognize that there's room to move forward, and that's important. Here's where you begin to identify what's going to be of value for you going forward, where you get a feel of the reality of the situation, what's reasonable to expect going forward. Step 1, ask yourself where exactly you want to be in the future. This is where you get down to the details. Breaking things down is essential to making goals approachable. So what? What are your objectives? How can you prioritize them? What specific support will you need to get there? What obstacles can get in your way, and moreover, how can you proactively prevent them? All the while keeping in mind the why of the objective. Why have you set out on this journey in the first place? Step 2, reflecting as you go, not just at the end. Be appreciative at every step of the way. Somehow you got from being stuck at wherever it was that you were at the beginning and you moved forward. You made progress. And it's so important to recognize that within yourself, any amount of progress. If you get angry with yourself for not being a step further where you initially expected to be, you're simply building up the amount of weight on yourself, and it'll keep you from going forward. Because every moment you're working really hard to get to the next step, all you'll be thinking about is how you should have been a step further. And that's not a very productive mindset. Part of appreciating where you are, being grateful for the present, should be a daily mindset. One thing I found to be really successful in my own life is to work in 30 minutes a day of simple, happy time. Do whatever it is that makes you happy without the guilt that you have other stuff you should be doing. In these 30 minutes, there's nothing you should be doing but what makes you happy. With someone who has anxiety, that's one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself, is 30 minutes without any shoulds. Because for someone who has anxiety, your life is one big should. I should be doing this. I should not be doing this. I should be this. Now, to some of you, this way of approaching growth and accomplishing your goals might seem like overkill. But when you're sitting in bed or watching TV because you don't want to confront your responsibilities, breaking them down like this helps. Once your huge, overbearing burden is broken down into tangible pieces, all of a sudden things seem a lot easier. It also helps you remember why you're going to so much trouble. Why did you start this project or take this harder class? And that why needs to be what drives you. And if that why isn't there, well, then maybe your time is better spent somewhere else. And this brings me to my next point. The differences in mindset that one can have when approaching a plan B. One can either view a plan B as a fallback plan or a fall-through plan, depending on their mindset going in. A fallback plan means creating a plan B with a mindset that if your success doesn't work out, you failed and have to fall back on something without having made progress. A fall-through plan is a reformed mindset of approaching your plan B, that if your first plan, your plan A, didn't work out, you've fallen through to something new, and you've still learned from it and ended up further along your path than when you started. When you view your potential plan B with a mindset aligned with the fallback plan, it often translates to not putting your all in the first place with plan A, because if that doesn't work out, you'll believe that you have failed. It's taken me a very long time to realize that failing after putting my all into something is in fact better than failing because I didn't try my hardest. Because if you don't try your hardest, you'll never even know what you're capable of. And furthermore, this is ultimately why I don't believe in regrets. Not because I don't have things in my life to regret per se, but because I try to envision every mistake, embarrassment, moment of pain as a learning experience, as that indicator of, okay, here's my starting line. Wherever I go from here can only be forward. I don't believe everything happens for a reason, although in moments of weakness, I like to convince myself of it. But I do believe that we absolutely have something to learn from every single thing that happens. And with everything that happens, we have the opportunity to decide to grow as people. And that's the only reason I need. So all in all, my theory on successfully reaching your goals requires the following. You have to start with passion or purpose. There has to be that reason why. Passion or purpose is the driving force behind everything. Then you need motivation, that initial drive to shock you into getting up, getting started, and doing. And the ultimate and longer-lasting determination to sustain you, the plan's steps -1 to 2, to follow it through and to shape and guide that passion. And every step of the way, you have to reflect and appreciate where you've gotten. Appreciation is the distance, not the displacement when it comes to your journey. And that you should appreciate your whole journey, even the parts where you feel you're going backwards. Because if you learn from those times, then you're still moving forward. Failure is what shapes us. It's what gives us that starting point. So now I'm going to point out to you where in the process depression and anxiety play a role. The passion part is still entirely intact, but depression fully eliminates the motivation section, and anxiety puts the determination section in an unhealthy overdrive if it's not channeled properly. It's like taking Adderall when you don't have ADHD. What pushes you through the goal process isn't happy motivation to follow your passions as it should be. It's all the lingering questions of what if? What if I don't finish? What if I don't do it right? What if this dictates my whole future? What if there's something wrong with me? If you know that all of these questions are going to weigh on you the second you start tackling your goals, you can imagine why anxiety also plays into diminishing the motivation aspect as well. Having the passion with no way to pursue it is endlessly frustrating. But a huge key to unlocking the motivation and determination section is the appreciation section. Accepting that where you are is okay, and that even just one step forward is a step in the right direction. It's about progress, not perfection. It's about trying to be just one step further than where you were yesterday, because that's progress. No one should feel powerless when it comes to their own life or pursuing their own passions. I wholeheartedly believe that anyone can accomplish what they set out for themselves if they approach it with tact and with heart. Any pursuit, no matter how big or how small, will always start with just one step. And I implore you to experiment with what happens with when that first step is backwards, enabling you to reflect, collect yourself, and plan ahead. Because you can move forward by taking a step back, and oftentimes it's the most effective way to do so. Thank you.